I exposed that, and she had me arrested. Prior to having me arrested, her car was blown up, and they tried to blame me for blowing up her
Oh,
car.
geez. So
Yeah,
it's bad here. Okay, now the kids that have been trafficked and abused, are they mostly white young girls?
mostly white working class. Yeah, and mostly white working class, and also that the state would rather forget they existed.
Just a quick break from the program. I need to share with you in urgent manner about scam gold IRAs and the important need to make sure that you're working with a trusted company in the precious metal space. I have had hundreds of people come to me now where they have lost 50, 60, 70% of their life savings in these scam gold IRAs. We are having nearly 100% success rate getting their money back. If you have put your life savings into a gold IRA, I implore you to look and see if you have been scammed. Don't trust the company that sold it to you. Make sure you understand what you can get as a buyback value for the gold or silver that you have in your IRA. If you have noticed a significant drop in what you invested, you have more than likely been scammed. We can help you, and there's no shame. Go to sarahwestall.com/Miles Franklin, fill out that form, and we will help you get your life savings back. Welcome to Business Game Changers. I'm Sarah Westall. I have Raja Miah coming to the program. This is an incredible story. He is a decorated human rights activist in the UK. He's a Muslim. He's been spending decades of his life trying to deal with human rights abuses. And in the last 6 years, he realized there was a network of over 100,000 children that were being used by these Pakistani rape gangs, as he was calling it, for politicians to be bribed and used to get a voting block. He's going to explain it. And the persecution he's been under for exposing this with some of the top politicians in the UK is absolutely incredible. Elon Musk came to his defense, and that is why he's not in prison today. And it helped him get publicity and safety, frankly. But you're going to have to hear this story for yourself. It's hard to believe some of these things when you think you trust these politicians because of the way they talk, and then you realize they're actually involved in something like this. It's important for us not to be naive in this, and the fog of war in a situation like this, the fog of combat when the stakes are so high, you're going to see narratives and false information from all directions. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is for us to get to the truth. And where that truth usually lies is with the victims and the getting to the source of where these crimes lie, because that's where you get the best information. And that's why detectives and people who are used to doing these kind of investigations, they do their homework. They go talk to the people involved. They roll up their sleeves and they actually figure out what really happened. And that's what needs to happen if you really want to get to the bottom of all of this and let the truth speak for itself. So this story is absolutely incredible. It happened in the UK, but it's not as if these kinds of things are not happening elsewhere in our country and in other countries. So with that being said, I want to remind you, I have a peptide webinar coming up on Thursday the 20th at 5 p.m. Central Time with Dr. Diane Kaiser and me. We're going to be talking about the most effective peptides, how you can use them, and what you should be looking for, and what the myths are, what cycling is, what dosages are, how you can use this to better your life. If you are interested in signing up for that, go to sarahwestall.com/peptides and you can sign up for it there. I'll have the link below. Also, sign up for my Substack, sarahwestall.substack.com. You will get notices of that and my shows and also articles. I put these shows in the context. I'll write up an art, not on every show, because I just don't have the time to do it on every show. But for a lot of shows, I'll put I'll write up context, and I'll think about it more, and I'll put the show into context of the backstory and what really went into what I was doing with the interview. And ideally, I would do that with every single interview I do, which I just can't. But every interview that I do, I have a backstory and why I decided to do the interview and what it means and how it applies to what we're dealing with in society. Some of it is just the edge of change of where we're going. Like I just did a show with Dr. Jack McCullum. It's one of my most interesting shows you're going to see, and it's on the changing brain and how kids these days, their actual brain structure is different than what it was when we grew up, or even our grandparents grew up. Our brains are changing, and why? He's a pediatric neurologist, but he's also has his PhD in history, so he's tying it back to history as well. One of my most favorite discussions, because it really helps bring clarity to what's going on, and then potentially what kind of future we're going to see because of this. So hopefully you sign up for my Substack, sarahwestall.substack.com. The Peptide webinar, November 20th, Thursday, November 20th at 5 p.m. And go to sarahwestall.com/peptides. Okay, let's get into this incredible conversation with Raja Miah. Hi, Raja. Welcome to the program.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.
You have an incredible story you're going to share that a lot of people just don't realize is going on. It's kind of horrifying when you look into some of these details that this is actually happening in the world. Can you, before we get into that, can you explain or share with the audience who you are and what your background is?
Absolutely. I spent over 20 years in public service, sat in rooms with multiple prime ministers, secretaries of state in the United Kingdom, represented my country. Queen Elizabeth II put a medal on my chest by the time I was 30 years old. I helped develop a lot of the strategies in the United Kingdom around race relations, community development, that sort of stuff. Historically, very much of the left, Sarah, to my shame, I think, retrospectively. And I came back to the small town that raised me. I was raised in a small mill town in the part northwest of England called Oldham. And I went off to work, and then I came back. And when I came back, long story short, put in front of me was a folder of evidence, and that evidence was of the systematic cover-up of the gang rape of the town's children, involving politicians. They were selling children for votes. Long and short of it, they were selling children for votes. And we embarked on a campaign that took the best part of 7 years before, thankfully, with the intervention of Elon Musk, it blew up. And what the truth now is in our country, the government were complicit in the industrial scale gang rape of working class white girls, over 100,000 children, over decades, where the perpetrators were predominantly Pakistani Muslim men who supplied certain politicians and political parties with the block votes that kept them in power or took them into power.
Wow.
So
okay, this is an incredible thing. Let me unpack a little bit first. Okay. Oh, holy crap. Okay. First of all, I want to say, being on the left, the left has changed, right? I mean, a lot of people fought for everybody to be treated with respect and dignity. And I don't know if that's a left cause or not, but a lot of people thought that was. And I think that's a cause of all decent human beings, because the right and the left, what we traditionally thought was both sides thought that way. And I think the general middle still do. It's just the extremes went off the deep end.
Well, whatever the left is now in the United Kingdom, I'm sure it's the same in the States. I'm not of it. And people,
not if it's supporting this, right? Okay, so this is incredible. Okay, so now you were active in helping and with race relations. That was your job, to the point where you actually were given a medal and you were working with prime ministers. Can you talk a little bit so people understand your background? So you're not just some Yahoo that's coming out of the blue making these allegations. You were a high-ranking person who's dedicated your life to race relations, and so
Over 20 years. So some context, over 20 years of my life working at the highest level, I would say, in government. I've sat in rooms with multiple prime ministers, secretaries of state, helped develop government policy where something went wrong. My background is in counter extremism specifically. So where something went wrong, I was sent to try and understand it and make sense of it so we could safeguard our nation. So that's what my background is. And I came back into a very small working class town where I was raised, and I wanted none of this. I think that's also very important to make out. An elderly gentleman by the name of Warren Bates kept mithering me after I helped clean up the local mosque. The chairman of the local mosque was a convicted sex offender, and the local authorities and the police were quite happy with that arrangement because of his political links. I campaigned to have him removed. It was my mosque. It was the mosque where my mother's funeral took place a couple of years ago. So it was my mosque. I helped clean it up. And after I cleaned it up, this man, Warren Bates, contacted me, eccentric old gentleman, former councillor, 12 years old, 13 years old. He was a minor, the white working class that the Labour Party left behind in my country. And he put in front of me a dossier of files that showed that in the town where I was raised, and this is why it's important, I think, in the town where I was raised, whilst I was away helping serve the nation, thinking I was doing a good thing, I actually, what was taking place back home was children as young as 12 were being dragged off the streets in broad daylight, where they were taken into these shisha bars. So those are these smoking dens where they were being raped, drugged, trafficked across the country.
God, okay.
The authorities knew about it and the authorities covered it up.
Okay, so I've been covering for over 10 years this, and I in and out, and I did it. I really went in, started in about 2016. But I want to establish a couple baselines here. What is your background? Like, what is your religion? You said the mosque was yours. So
yes, I'm a Bangladeshi heritage, and I'm a Muslim.
Okay, that's another important point. So you're not going after Muslims per se because you don't think Muslims, it's like any kind of stereotype. It's not like all Muslims do this. It's just there is this gang of extremists who are doing this, and they're in cahoots with the government, and it's keeping this bloc voting for their candidates. And they look another way while they're taking advantage of over 100,000 children over how long of a time?
Decades. The evidence is decades, at least 3 decades.
My gosh. Okay, now in your research, was it just the Muslims, or was it beyond Muslims? I would assume.
No. So in the context of this, what makes these crimes unique? And if you recall, right at the beginning, we affirmed that my background was in race relations. I'm a trained anti-racist, so I was trained to spot racism and react and respond to racism. What was taking place and what has been taking place in this country, in the United Kingdom, and the evidence so far is 85 local authorities, so 85 councils. There's only like 300 councils in the entire country, so like a third of the country this took place in. There's a predominantly Pakistani diaspora, so people who came here in the 60s and the 70s from Pakistan, from the Mirpur district of Pakistan. Now, the context of this is that they came with a set of beliefs and attitudes where what we consider to be children, they don't consider to be children. So 12, 13, culturally, they don't consider that to be a child. For them, that's an adult. Secondly, they have a whole host of religious prejudices that legitimize slavery of white girls, of non-Muslims. And they came to this country off the back of 2 very significant historical events. One was the creation of Pakistan. And I don't want to bore you, but I think it gives you the context. Your listeners will want this. In the creation of Pakistan in 1947, The entire nation was formed through a process of ethnic cleansing. So the ethnic cleansing was the removal of the Hindus and the Sikhs from what had become modern day Pakistan, and they used rape genocide as a method to, to cleanse what became Pakistan. In 1971, in the war between what became Bangladesh and Pakistan, East Pakistan and West Pakistan, over a 9-month period, the Pakistani government and the Muslim clerics, the Islamic clerics from Pakistan, supported a militia and the army to set up rape camps in what became Bangladesh. And the official figures are somewhere between 300 and 400,000 children, women, girls were raped in these rape camps. So the nation was formed off the back of rape, and rape was used as a weapon of war and a racial weapon of war. So these men were taught these people are inferior. They're either Hindus or Sikhs, or racially the Bangladeshis, they're inferior, and God gives you the permission to rape them.
My God. Okay, so that's what I was going to ask you.
That's the context. And then they came to the United Kingdom with those beliefs.
Well, and that's what I was going to ask you. What warrants their behavior or belief that somebody who is free, that a family here believes that child is free and independent, why they can then turn them into a slave that they own? Where do they get that mental attitude?
One is cultural, because of the history of how the nation was formed and what they did in forming that. No one has ever punished. Like how we had the Second World War and the Nazis were promised or were punished, and everyone agreed, that Nazism was evil and all the rest of that. That education has never took place, because it's in our multicultural utopia that we want to create. We don't talk about the prejudices of the minority communities. We focus on the prejudices of the majority community. So you can only be racist if you're white, I think is what I'm saying in a simplified form.
So we're naive, right? I mean, the point is that in the quest of having this everybody be treated equal, we are ignoring this incredible nastiness that's coming with it. They have to behave too if we're going to have any kind of utopia. Come on.
But they never have behaved. They never behaved there. And when they came here, they were allowed to do what they were doing to specifically, we have in this country a working class demographic, a white working class demographic that is treated with contempt, considered to be an underclass in many ways. So no one cares for them. And if you do care for them, you're branded racist. And that's what took place. So this 100,000 children who were systematically gang raped and trafficked, and the men who were raping them, so we're clear, they were like brothers, cousins together, fathers and sons, 3 generations of the same family, raping these children, trafficking them across the country to their cousins elsewhere.
And who were they? Who were the ones that were raping and trafficking?
Predominantly Pakistani. Okay. And we've forced that out of the government now. Just before the national inquiry was announced, a woman called Baroness Casey was brought in to do an audit, and she makes specific reference to Pakistani in that. This is because of the and it's hard because you generalize and you stereotype, and I don't want to do that. But the truth is the truth. There is an undercurrent within that community of racial superiority, of religious justification, and because they operate in a clan-based structure. So they operate as though, these extended families, these clans, so they control thousands and thousands of votes, where the mosques or the community leaders or the elders, kingpins of these cartels, I call them, control the votes. They were very quickly able to work out that in exchange for supplying these votes to predominantly white politicians, let's be clear, predominantly white politicians, the system then turned a blind eye to their indiscretions. And the terminology that was used was to maintain community relations. So we sacrificed 100,000 children in this country to maintain community relations.
They want people to stay ignorant to what's really going on, because they think that if they aren't, then they are going to racially discriminate against all Pakistanians. And so our problem is that they want people to think that the racism and the bad behavior is only white people, because if we find out what some Pakistanis or what their cultural beliefs are, then we will discriminate against them in whole. And so the result of that is these hundreds of thousands of kids who are being raped and traded for votes because we're too weak to acknowledge the truth and get past that.
And our Prime Minister in January, when this exploded, the first speech our Prime Minister gave was to stand up and say this was what we'd released, what the evidence that is now proven to be true, what we'd come out with was a far-right bandwagon. The Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, stood up and claimed that we were lying and this was a far-right bandwagon.
Well, and because even though the proof shows that these kids were murdered and traded, they don't want to be
murdered
implicated.
As well, so we're clear, murdered as well, yeah.
Well, that they don't want to be implicated in trading votes for this behavior. So they're going to fight it tooth and nail because they don't want to be implicated.
There are politicians directly involved in what took place, in facilitating what took place on the grassroots, on the front line. There were politicians involved in covering things up for them. And now the government is involved in trying to rig the national inquiry. So there are politicians involved in this. And if we get to where we want to get to on this, and God willing, we will get there, is we will see politicians in prison for their complicity in the industrial scale gang rape of our nation's children.
Oh my
and the
God.
evidence is overwhelming. The evidence is overwhelming. They've done everything they can to try and silence us. I've been in and out of police cells for the last 3-4 years, fabricated allegation after allegation against me, and they've lost because we forced the truth out, and now there will be a reckoning.
The truth has a way of getting out, and the truth needs to speak for itself. You don't need to make anything up. You don't need to, here's the truth. Everybody can decide for themselves. Now, you have been in and out of jail. Why are, and I know why they are, but what did you do specifically that they are, I know what you did specifically, but what are they claiming you did that's bad enough to get you into prison?
Oh, they arrested me as a racist and far-right activist. So there's a brown-faced Muslim man that the Queen put a medal on his chest for services to the nation, was arrested as a racist and far-right activist. And that included because I'm very clear on this. These are racially motivated crimes because the motivation of these men is racist.
But the opposite direction.
Yeah, but and we can have this argument if you want, when they never have done, where, because it's case after case against me collapsed in court or I won in court. But in the end, the truth is the truth. These are racially motivated crimes. There's 100,000 of our children, white working class, and the perpetrators were predominantly Pakistani. And they justify their actions also through their religious interpretations of the Quran. And I'm sorry. I can in a democracy, I can question the interpretation of the teachings of my own faith. And I'm not talking about someone else's faith. This is my own faith. Surely
That's
I can question that. They weren't having it. They dawn raided my house repeatedly. They fabricated evidence. They just fabricated evidence. And the plan was to try and not just to put pressure on me so I'd give up, but they also openly worked with a criminal network. So there's a man called Charlie Peters, a journalist from GB News, who's done some really, really interesting work. And he's demonstrated how the rape gangs, I call them rape gangs, were operated alongside the heroin gangs, the drug dealing gangs. And they were the same families. They were the same Pakistani families who traded children just as they traded drugs.
Yeah, it's the same networks, right?
Yeah. And the third member of the family, so that one's trading the children, one's trading the drugs, and the third member of the family consistently is a politician, a local councilor.
Okay, yeah, because that's what allows it to happen, right?
Where I come from, the leader of the council, and to give you some context of this, she is also the chair of the National Constitutional Committee of the Labour Party, one of the most powerful politicians in this country. She's the equalities lead for a man called Andy Burnham, who's the Greater Manchester Mayor. He's a senior figure in this country. Her name is Arooj Shah. Arud Shah hangs off the arm of a man called Irish Imi. Irish Imi was the getaway driver of a cop killer. A man called Dale Cregan killed two police officers, two policewomen in our country, and the council leader hangs off his arm. And she's one of the most powerful politicians in this country. I exposed that, and she had me arrested. Prior to having me arrested, her car was blown up, and they tried to blame me for blowing up her car.
Oh, geez. So it's bad here. Okay, now the kids that have been trafficked and abused, are they mostly white young girls?
Mostly white working class, yeah, and mostly white working class, and also that the state would rather forget they existed. So recently there was an inquiry done called ICSA, an independent inquiry into child sexual exploitation. Took 7 years to conduct. They tried to avoid, or they pretty much avoided, this issue of the grooming gangs. They talked about child abuse in its widest sense, not this particular sense, when this is unique because of its racial motivations and because of its political links. They came back and said, one of the recommendations was compensation for children. A lot of these children were in care homes, so the state was caring for these children. They came back and said, we can't compensate these children because
Why?
there's too many of them. It'll cost too much.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So nothing can be done. I mean, even making sure that they get an education, setting up a program for them.
I went to a tribute a couple of weeks ago in a town called Rochdale, which is next door to where I live, for a young woman called Charlotte Tetley. Charlotte Tetley, the coroner released her suicide details last month. She was one of the survivors of the grooming gangs. She'd been gang rape, trafficked from the age of 12. She'd made it to about 30, and of course, drug dependency, a whole host of things, because they're damaged as a consequence of what's happened to them. Well, completely understandable. Do you know what they did? They made her move out of her town where she had all of her support networks to let the guy who was involved in gang raping her move back into the town.
Oh my gosh. I mean,
they moved her to a place called Macclesfield, yeah, and she committed suicide because all of her support networks were took away from her. Yeah.
Well, because it's like, how much more cruelty can you foist onto somebody? I had somebody the other day say, I don't know you're Muslim, but the darkness. People think that balance of light and dark in the unit to help us learn, whatever. I don't know what people believe, but the darkness is so incredibly strong. That to me is such darkness. It's incredible that it has taken hold and is this powerful. Just a short break to share with you an amazing peptide. This one is GHK-Cu. This is one of the best anti-aging peptides on the market, period, as far as what they're finding. This comes in a spray, a nasal spray. It comes in an injectable. And why I like this so much is it also comes in a capsule form. So this is a really great option for you if you do not want the injection. Now, I use the injectable, but what it does for people is amazing. In preclinical trials, it showed a 70% increase in collagen, a 35% increase in elastin. It helps with sleep. It helps with joint repair. It helps with promoting hair growth and reducing hair loss. And it stimulates your follicles so your hair is stronger and grows back. I know a lot of people, as you age, your hair thins out, right? It also reduces wrinkles, and it helps in so many different ways. If you are interested in getting this, I will have the link below, or you can go to sarahwestall.com under shop, and you can find the peptide link there. This one is an amazing anti-aging peptide. So remember, GHK-Cu, and remember to use the coupon code Sarah to save 10%. Okay, back to the program.
Sarah, this is a fight between good and evil, and this has become made very clear to me on the journey I've been on. And every time I was on the verge of something horrific happening to me, or they succeeding in shutting me down, the only reason I'm here is by the grace of God. No more complicated than that. There was, for instance, one of the times where I was arrested and I was let out, And the local newspapers had run with the story that I'd been arrested as part of a child sex exploitation network. I was a paedophile. They've just
Oh yeah,
falsified,
they had to
you
do
know,
that. That's
yeah,
it's just incredible. Yeah.
they'd falsified that. Clearly, I went to pick up my daughter from school. She was 6 years old at the time. All the other parents were staring at me. You can imagine what was going on. And a gentleman came up to me, and I only knew him in passing because my daughter and his daughter were in the same class, in school. And he said to me, "I can help you." And he was a barrister. And
Good. He was a good person.
if
There's
it
good.
wasn't for
There's
him, they would have had me in prison. Yeah,
there's good people embedded everywhere that you're seeing
yeah.
come out that are seeing these same patterns. But I think the darkness is stronger now than the light. At least in some places. And it's if you don't see it based on stories like this. Now Elon Musk came and helped you, which is pretty
Brilliant. Yeah,
remarkable. So
yeah.
you were probably sitting there going, "Oh my God, what am I fighting right now?" Just like many
We'd
others in the
lost.
past. Go ahead.
Yeah, we'd lost. So it took us 6 years to force our council, because we've got to go through due process of getting a council to pass a vote to write to the government to say there's a problem in the town to do with the gang rape of children. The council, obviously, the politicians in there didn't want that because they were all involved in the cover up. So we removed them. We removed, at the local elections, we went out and campaigned. I had an army of predominantly pensioners. We went out, knocked on doors, campaigned, and we removed councillor after councillor after councillor, council leader after council leader after council leader. All the time, the police are arresting me and trying to put me in prison to say, "No, we arrested you to stop you from campaigning." Remember, it's meant to be a democracy. We've arrested you to stop you from lawfully campaigning because we're uncomfortable with what you're doing. Getting people to go out and vote and remove politicians who are involved in the cover up. Anyway, we did that. We got 6 years it took us, and then we forced the council to write to the government. We wrote to the government, and a woman called Jess Phillips, she's the Minister for Safeguarding Girls, built her entire career on this fallacy of how she stands up for women. She sat on our appeal and wrote back to us saying, "No, we don't need an inquiry there. You can do it yourself. The government doesn't need to intervene."
Is she involved?
And I
I mean,
remember,
besides covering up your thing, is she, because a lot of people who are acting like they are helping trafficked people are actually fronts to clear out their competition. Really?
yeah, and we forced her into a series of admissions of the last year, where she's now admitted she's known about it for 14 years.
So
So the
she's,
most
is she
senior
the
politician in
worst
the
thing?
country,
So the worst
most
thing
se-
is, go ahead. I'm
the
sorry.
most senior female politician in the country, whose job is specifically to safeguard girls, has known about this for 14 years and refused an inquiry when we wrote to her. And and she wrote back to the town, and it was a horrible letter. It was a really condescending letter. And I released it on New Year's Day. And I'd given up then. I was out of money. I was just out. I was just knackered, and I'm
Yeah, I
thinking, how
know.
much more
Yeah.
how much more can I give? And I said, here, world, have this letter. This is what we've got back. Within hours, Elon Musk had picked up on it, and just like that, it changed. Just like that, it changed. And now it's, I'm speaking to you. We forced the national inquiry here. They're trying to cover it up, but it makes no difference because the truth is out. In the United Kingdom, to maintain this myth of a multicultural utopia, we exchanged the lives of hundreds of thousands of small working class white girls who were systematically groomed, gang raped, drugged, and trafficked across the United Kingdom. Many of them have died, and the authorities were complicit in the cover up. So much so, the truth has now also emerged in one of the neighbouring towns, Rotherham, it's called, where the official records confirmed 1,400 children. It's only a small town, 1,400 children officially were groomed and gang raped in this way. In just a small town, what's come out is that the police were involved. The police were raping these children in the back of police cars. And of course, the policemen were Pakistani men who were linked to the Pakistani networks.
And the truth, all you're asking for is for the truth to come out and let it speak for itself. And it does
We
do.
want this to stop. We want this to stop.
Well,
You know,
yeah,
we
exactly.
I have a child. I don't want my child growing up in a place where she could be dragged off the street in broad daylight, drugged, raped, and trafficked, and the authorities arrest the parents because that's what they were doing.
It's just it's incredible. It kind of messes up their utopia narrative, doesn't it?
It doesn't, and all cultures are not the same. And I've, you know, as I say, I'm with you. I'm traditionally of the left, and no, all cultures are not the same. And these men and their cultural history and their religious interpretation is one that is completely alien to that of a liberal Western democracy, where we safeguard our children, don't we? It's one of the things we try and present ourselves as a civilized society. A 12-year-old child will not get dragged off the street and gang raped and trafficked. And when the policeman comes along, he's not going to arrest the
Not gonna
parent,
do it
and he
either.
definitely isn't going to join in the raping of the child.
Oh, God. Okay. So Musk came to your rescue, and he is being persecuted himself in the UK. They don't like him. And
They don't like the fact that we can use independent media to tell our own stories. So the power of X, how we've used Facebook, YouTube, they try to shut us down on all of those platforms. And I think if they had their way, they would close down these platforms. They don't want this story getting out, or stories like this getting out.
well, of course, because they're implicated, they're part of it, and then it goes against their narrative of this utopia BS that it's just not real. It's not real, and that's what the real is what you were trying to do before. But we can't be naive and think that somebody who has the opposite of our beliefs can come into the system and just operate the way that we expect them to. We need to have higher standards, don't you think?
I went to the Remembrance service, so it's Remembrance Sunday. We call it here. So we wear the poppies and we remember the fallen from the world wars and stuff. I went to the Remembrance service on Sunday, and it's the same every year. There's a complete absence of Muslims at these Remembrance services. What we've got in this country, and it's the same way. It'll be the same way you are, and it'll escalate in the same way. Is you have an entire demographic of people who are not citizens of the nation first. They are Muslims first, or bought into a radical Islamist ideology first, who just happen to live here. And they don't want to live alongside us. They don't want to integrate with us. They want their own parallel society. And over the fullness of time, they will carve out their own silos, something equivalent to the Balkans. That's what they want. That's where the United Kingdom is heading unless we intervene. And it's whether the politicians who we are trying to support have the courage to intervene. So
Well,
that's
and
what
to
I'm
be
saying.
fair, we used to expect that. We used to say, if you're going to come here, you need to assimilate and embrace our culture. And then they stopped expecting that, and then now we get the ramifications of it.
Yeah, and what we've got is the historical immigration in this country has been with people who wanted to belong here or had a connection to here. That's not the case anymore. That just isn't the case anymore. There's no relationship. There's no love for the nation, and you can see you sense it. You go to places like London, and they're transforming at such a rate where we're losing. We're losing because we won't face up to this, and one of the reasons we won't face up to this because, as was proven in the rape gangs, were a lot of the social workers, the frontline staff who were aware of everything that was going on, could have spoken out, didn't speak out, and time after time after time, they said they didn't speak out because they were scared of being accused of being racist.
So we have to put this into a proper context too, in the sense that the politicians who are promoting this are white, mostly white politicians who are using this
Mostly
to their
white.
benefit. So we have to put a hard red line here and say we don't want anyone who doesn't view our standards of what a civilization is to be here. And if you're here already and you're not living up to that standard, you need to be prosecuted and put into prison. So
And that's what we're campaigning for now. Politicians should go to prison for their roles in the complicity And the court transcripts, and they're trying to censor the court transcripts, but the court transcripts that we've managed to get hold of, 3 men, 4 men, 5 men at a time with a 12-year-old child.
My gosh.
And they're lined up outside to take turns.
Yeah, that's the gang rape stuff. And the poor girl is messed up for the rest of their life.
Children gone missing. Children then told, you've got to bring your sister or you've got to bring a friend next time, otherwise we'll go and burn your house down and kill your mum. All of that sort of stuff. Stories of children disappearing and being chopped up and mixed with kebab meat. All of that stuff has happened in the United Kingdom, is documented in the United Kingdom.
So what does that do to a soul of a country? I mean, you don't go unscathed by having that as an underbelly of what's going on, right? You start to see symptoms everywhere of the fact that this is what our politicians are supporting. So you start seeing it in other areas of life.
Well, where's the trust? You know what? Society here is on the verge of, people say civil war and stuff, and I won't go that far because the English are restrained. The British are conservative by their very nature. But, so it's not like some parts of Africa, for instance, where you'd see that, or in South America. We're not like that. But we've lost all trust and all faith in our political system. And if that's where we are, where do we go from here?
Well, that's kind of what's happening in the United States, too. People have lost complete trust and faith of the politicians because they just keep lying and we keep uncovering crimes. And this level of crime is civilization can't stand.
100,000 children. 100,000 children.
Civilization can't stand with this being the undercurrent of what's propping up the politicians. It can't. It's a house of cards, right? And that's what we're seeing. But it could take down our countries if we're not careful.
I think we are. You'd be nothing other than arrogant if you believe that somehow our civilization is impregnable, and the same cannot happen to us as what happened to civilizations before us. The Western way of life and the liberal Western democracy that we believe in is very much at risk. And it's at risk because our leaders have done deals with people who do not have our interests at heart, and they've sacrificed their own people, our people, in exchange for power. And this isn't in some faraway land as part of our foreign policy. This is in our towns and cities in our own country. And it's unforgivable.
It is unforgivable. So how do people learn more about this and support your cause? Because these are the causes that we have to support. I mean, we have to put an end to this.
There's I'm a political campaigner, so I'm only one element of a growing movement. So you can contact me by all means. I'm on X. You'll find me on X. Just type my name in. But there are brave people like Maggie Oliver, who was a police officer who was basically sacked for whistleblowing what took place. She runs a foundation that supports the children themselves. Campaigners like a woman called Sammy Woodhouse, who just helped to pass a law, if we can stop it from being amended too much, where they were prosecuting the girls as prostitutes.
That's incredible. Okay, so it's absolutely incredible. Now, are there politicians that you are supporting because they're not part of this network? Because the politicians who are showing courage and who aren't part of this network need to be highlighted, because otherwise they're persecuted too.
The first one is a man called Rupert Lowe. He came in on the wave of reform, so he was one of the original reform MPs. They had a falling out. He's now independent, but he's a decent man, regardless of his, powerful people bicker with each other all the time is what I found. I don't get involved in that. He's a decent man, is Rupert. He crowdfunded something like £600,000. He's launched his own national inquiry, which doesn't have the powers, but it adds pressure to the government.
Sure.
So he's doing that and speaking out in Parliament. There's a young Conservative MP called Katie Lamb. I admire her immensely. Her bravery is her tenacity has got to be admired. She stands up in Parliament and reads out the court transcripts of what these men said whilst they were doing what they were doing. And, so those two stick out straight away. Reform, the political party Reform, promised in the last manifesto. Hopefully they'll promise again in the next one that there'll be a proper national inquiry and these people go to prison. So that's Nigel Farage and his team. But the right is fractured here. I don't know what it's like in the States, and
It is.
and it's not in our interests. Because it's fractured, it makes us weaker, and they're fractured over insignificant small issues, not.
Well, I think that this isn't a right-left issue. The extremes are going to be the extremes. I think the entire middle of the country and people who understand what's
this
going
country,
on
our country is horrified. When I sit and I travel the country every day, I speak at events, and it's now got to a place where no one can legitimize what took place. The cover-ups, the truth is out, and you can't legitimize what took place. And people historically of the left also want the inquiry and the investigation.
That's right.
The problem we've got is the politicians, because they're incriminated, because they're neck deep in the cover-up. So some of the most powerful people in this country are neck deep in the cover-up of what took place. And these are senior government ministers. In the lead up to this news breaking, the Labour Party, so the Labour Party in the United Kingdom is now the party in government. Yeah, it's like your Republican Party. The Labour Party wrote to me and threatened to sue me if I didn't shut up. I told them I'd see them in the High Court. That's where we're up to, because they know once this house of cards comes toppling down, all of it collapses, because it goes to the highest level of government. The cover-up goes to the highest level of government.
Well, and we need to be ready to catch that and make sure we can sustain Western society. But Western society cannot be sustained with this in place. I mean, it's just that basic. Everything is a facade if you don't fix this. Now, how are you staying safe there? Because you are, you are uncovering some pretty serious stuff.
There's fatwas out on me. They've tried to kill me several times. I have an arrangement with my friends and my family about my daughter will be looked after, and I wake up every morning and I see the sunrise, and I wake up every morning and see the sunrise because I don't know if I'll see another one, and that's the truth.
Well, I think you're being protected. I think the spirit.
I think there's a higher power here. I honestly
think so too. Yeah, and we need to keep you in the spotlight, because that's how you maintain protection, because then otherwise you become a martyr, and then your message becomes further and farther. But thank you for everything you do. And the best place to follow you is on X. Is that true?
Yeah, just type in my name and I'll come up, Raja Miah, and then you'll see me. Please do give me a follow. And the more we have, the better. I am always overwhelmed when people like you get in touch, because in the United Kingdom, the mainstream media, I'm blacklisted. I'm blacklisted here. No one. So that's the truth of it. And I'm not lying about any of this. And I'm a campaigner. I've sacrificed the last 7 years to force this into the open. I don't gain anything from this, but it's not right. What sort of society are we? If we can't look after our children, what does that make us?
That's exactly right. Western society is a facade unless we can take care of this. Period. Yeah. Thank you so much for everything you do and you continue to do, and I appreciate you showing up on our show and telling your story.
Thank you so much. Thank you.